Elliot, thank you so much for coming. I know that you were in sort of the local area, but perhaps
Yeah.
as it turned out, not as local as we had thought. So massively appreciate you being here and having this conversation in person. I know we could have obviously done this online, but
hmm
I definitely wanted to meet in person. And for anybody listening, can we just have a bit of a rundown of who is Elliot Kay, if that's not too big a question?
It's a very deep question. Who is Elliot
Oh,
Kay?
we can go
We
straight
grapple
in.
with
We can go
that.
straight in.
We grapple with that daily. Who is Elliot Kay?
Who is he
Right?
today?
Who am I today? Well, the good news is I think I'm mostly me most days. So I run a couple of businesses now. My main focus is what is known as Pro Speakers, which puts on the Speaker Awards and the Speaker Summit here in the UK, which has grown to be the premium platform for professional speaking in the UK. We're in the process of launching another platform. We're not quite sure what that is yet. So I can't say anything because I don't know what it is. I've written 6 books, 3 of them sort of in the personal development space, 3 of them in the speaking space. I'm writing my 7th. And I live in the California of the UK, Devon, East Devon to be precise. I have 2 young kids. And that's in a nutshell, Elliot Kay. I have been in this space for 17 years now, a former professional dancer, and just all round dude.
All
I don't
round
even know what that
dude,
means. I don't even know what that game.
with the dad jokes. I think
Yeah, I
probably
think that's it,
dude with the
right?
dad jokes. I
Dad
think
jokes, dad moves. I've got it all.
got it all.
I've got it all going
Amazing.
on. I'm just the dad dude dancing jokey bloke.
Got it. Amazing. Let's unpick that a little
Shall
bit
we?
because that journey, before we get into kind of really kind of going into public speaking and positioning, and especially in this era, the importance of that. I would love to just delve a little bit into kind of what you summarized in about 30 seconds, which
Yeah.
is your initial kind of journey was in dancing. And I'd
Yeah.
love to kind of understand how being a professional dancer has kind of taken you onto the path of where you're at now.
I think I'm kind of a bit late to the game in everything I do, in one sense, right? I'm never the kind of innovator. I'm never the front of the line kind of person. I'm not the one that gets the gadget first. I'm not the one that hears about gadgets first. And there's a reason I'm saying that is because actually I started dancing late as well. So it's not like I started dancing when I was 6, and I started dancing when I was, how old was I? 21. When I was 21 is when I actually started dancing.
I mean, that's amazing that that you were like, this is what I want to do. That in itself is is a
Yeah, and
story.
again, it was kind of this evolution, right? So I went to uni, and then I was studying dance and drama, but the uni they were just doing, it was all very theory based. It was like writing essays about dance, and I was learning about choreographers, and drama was all very heavily. And when at the time I wasn't diagnosed as dyslexic, actually at the university I was diagnosed as dyslexic.
Okay.
Finally, after years of going, I'm dyslexic. And they're going, no, you're just disruptive. I'm like, no, I'm dyslexic. No, you just need more discipline. No, I can't read. Yeah, you're lazy. So, all this kind of stuff. And then finally I was diagnosed at uni. And then after 2 years at uni, came to the 3rd year, and I looked at all the modules I could have chosen. And I was only interested in 1 out of 6. And I was interested in dance performance. So against all the odds, against everyone's advice, including the teacher who told me I'd never be noticed and I'll never get in. Her first name begins with R, and her last name begins with R. I won't mention names. I also know she's no longer with us. And including my parents. Everyone's like, look, just finish your degree, right? And I had my typical watch me moment where I'm like, watch me. So then, I went on auditioned for 2 dance schools at the age of 21. I had long hair, big glasses, a bit like these, but bigger. I looked a bit more like John Lennon than I did. Yeah, I looked
Okay.
like John Lennon with my long hair and my round glasses. And I auditioned for Bedford, and I got in. And I was more attracted to the fact that I'd be the only bloke in the year.
Yeah, I can imagine there might have been an
Yeah.
appeal. Yeah.
Versus being the right school. But then I got into Northern School of Contemporary Dance in Leeds, and that really is where everything changed for me. And that was the place that's given me so much of the skills and everything that I've got now. You heard me talk about them at the Speaker Awards because you were there, and actually inviting my teacher back to acknowledge her for everything.
That was an amazing moment.
That was beautiful. Being able to do that. And my promise is always to give back to that school. And that's how I started my dance career. And then I had a bit of a I trained for 3 years, I got a scholarship, and I danced for 5 and then got injured. And again, that's where sort of I found myself at a crossroads. What do I do now, kind of thing.
So just to touch on that, you had a watch me moment, and we're going to talk about watch me in a moment because I'm really interested to kind of delve into that. But you had this watch me moment of parents, teachers, anybody who was telling you like you don't be ridiculous. Everybody's not everybody, but typically people tend to encourage the safer
Yeah.
moves and careers, and not necessarily for the wrong reasons. I guess often people encourage that safety, etc. So you had your watching moment, you ignored them, you took the career anyway, you had your success in that career, and then the injury happened.
Yeah.
What happened then? What was that feeling of like, watch me, I did it, and then the injury? Obviously, it's not your fault the injury happened, but that then changes that whole trajectory. So what happens in your inner world when that happens?
Well, I got injured once actually, and I had this same injury a year later. And it's quite interesting because I think it's important to your question. So I got injured up in Sheffield dancing with a dance company, and typical heroism, misplaced heroism. You dance through the injury. It was a pretty bad injury. It's a disc hernia, which I didn't know at the time. And I performed for 2 nights with a really bad back because I didn't want to let anyone down. The choreographer, it was her hometown. All these funders were coming. It's very important 2 days for the choreographer, who since then's ghosted me. But that's another conversation. Quite interesting. I found a video of her talking about that period, and she doesn't mention me at all. But there we go. And so I danced through it, not realizing how much worse I was making it. After I finished that, I actually took a year out to kind of get back into things and to stop for a bit. I went to see a chiropractor, and he said, "Look, you need to stop. You just need to stop." So that was hard in itself. He said, "Stop for 3 months, rebuild," which is what I did. I went, and then I started to rebuild, and then literally a year to the day, I got injured. I went and did a dance class in London, and it was the last exercise and my back went again. And that's kind of the pivotal moment you're referring to. Then, you know, that's when I kind of knew, or I didn't have the tools I had then that I have now. I think if I had those tools now, I would have approached it very differently, but I didn't. And actually, what I ended up doing is become very numb. I went very numb. You go into kind of autopilot. I was working at the time as a fundraiser on the phone. Someone of those annoying people that calls you and asks
It
for
was
money. It
you.
was me. That's how I actually found you. That's how we actually met before we met. You
All
just
right,
don't know
okay.
it. No, we didn't. So I was doing that. And the good thing is very flexible fit shift. So I just ended up working, going into numbness. And, I talk about this in one of my books, and just kind of drink, not like down the alcoholic route, but just drinking more
Yeah.
and partying more and just going to this place of escapism. And that's kind of where I ended. And that's the numbness. And then from there, I took this job with the intention of going back, and I ended up working nights, and I just didn't feel like I could go back anymore. I guess I just didn't want to hurt again. And so everything I'd fought for, the watch me moments, everything I'd proved everyone wrong, because I also got a scholarship from Northern School of Contemporary Dance, right? So I'd achieved a lot, like against the odds, so to speak. Started late, you know, um, being a male in a massively female environment, although the contemporary world's slightly different. I mean, this is 25 years ago now, right? I don't know how much things have changed, to be honest. So for me, that was the crossroads. So then it was about rediscovery. How do I? And I wasn't aware I wanted that until I discovered that. And so then I ended up as a trainer for some of the biggest brands in the UK, designing a customer service experience. Hence, me always banging on about people having a great experience
Mhm.
with my services and brands. And that's where I came into coaching. So that's where I discovered coaching. That's where I started studying coaching. And that's where I became a coach.
And it's interesting because obviously we've known each other for many years, and we would catch up now and then for drinks and dinner, wherever else. And I, well, going back probably 20 years or so, I was training for hypnotherapy in
That's
one of the
right. Yeah.
London hotels. And in the middle of our, what are meant to be like Zen, important sessions, there was this loud, like crowd next door, like whooping, and everyone's like, "What is going on?" And then we went out for the break. Of course, it was Elliot Kay, the coach with the hat,
At the time, yeah.
whooping the. And I was like, "Of course it is." So those were the eras of coach with the hat. So
Coach with a hat, that's one of my brands.
do you think that your journey through not just getting into dancing, actually, which in itself was a challenge for all the reasons you mentioned, but actually the recovery of having to pivot from it, do you think that's what kind of led you into coaching and personal development?
Yeah, I think what led me in there is I guess a redirection, right? I think what happened was at the time I wanted to be a really great trainer. I was loving training. Again, it was a little substitute for being on stage because I was training people, and I wanted to be the best trainer I could be. So I started to look at courses, and everything I read felt really dull and boring except for coaching. That felt exciting. So I enrolled on coaching. And then through coaching, ended up a typical big conference, 5,000 people. It's not Tony Robbins before people think it's Tony Robbins. And then that's where I was like, oh, that's where I was like, okay, this is going to give me something more. And actually, it was a session with this lady called Jen, who was one of my guinea pigs. Because when I did coaching, you actually had to train with people.
Hmm.
You didn't just attend a weekend or sign up online and get a certificate. Like I did 3 months of tests and, case studies. It was actually Jen's kind of words that shifted everything. That was the moment I think I found purpose again. And she said, I was in Acton at the time in West London, in my attic room, very messy room, doing this session on the phone. Remember those things when you used to pick up the
Actually,
phone?
phone people.
Yeah. And do sessions on the phone. Now it's all Zoom, right? And it was just the beginning of Skype, right?
Okay,
To give you, yeah,
okay.
yeah. So Skype was
Oh,
creeping in.
Skype.
I know Skype, right? Skype was creeping in. And I was doing a session with her as our third session. And she said a sentence that changed it all, right? She said, through working with you, I learned that I need to be happy to lose weight and not lose weight to be happy. And that was the moment, the typical, I just felt this, a nice side shake and this kind of like feeling inside. I was like, oh my God, I can really have an impact on people's lives when I'm doing this work. And that was the key turning point. That sentence. I don't think she ever. She's actually ironically commented on my post yesterday. I don't think she knows how much that line changed my
Well,
trajectory.
maybe she will now.
Maybe she will if she watches
Maybe
this.
she will
Jen,
now.
I should let her know that.
Let
Actually,
her know.
Jen Steele, if you're listening, it was your fault. I've done this whole thing.
It's all
It's
you,
all your
Jen.
fault. Exactly.
So that, to kind of fast forward well, not fast forward, but the journey has now led to very much kind of the public speaking, so Speaker Express,
Yeah.
and the different kind of companies and offers that you've built have been around your own public speaking journey and obviously training others in that. And I remember you very much have said about using your voice for good. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
it's something you still use, but I've always loved that the power of people's voices. Um, so kind of taking us into where you're at now with public speaking, that evolved from the coaching.
Yeah.
What elements have you taken from the coaching that kind of led you into that? Because it makes sense. Obviously, the training, I can see how all of the pieces have collided.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's elements of the coaching that also kind of come into that?
Yeah, so I think it's worth clarifying that I'm now very much in the professional speaking
Okay.
space versus public speaking, right? So
Can you
public,
just define the
yeah.
difference?
So public speaking is very much it's not paid. You kind of do it like a lot of coaches do public speaking because then they will sell people into courses. A lot of people will do public speaking as an extension of brands, right? So they'll represent.
Yes.
It's not in a direct payment for your time on stage.
Yeah.
A professional speaker gets paid to be on stage. So I was in the public speaking space. So Speak Influencer, my fourth book, is very much all about public speaking, about utilizing speaking to sell in a way that's authentic and graceful, not in a douchey scarcity, right? So public speaking is very much unpaid. So if you put public speaking, let's say on your LinkedIn, you're telling bookers that you're not paid.
Okay.
Right? But if you put expert speaker, professional speaker, you're indicating that you're paid and there's a budget for it. So now I'm very much in the professional speaking space. I'm in the people that get paid for their time to be on stage.
And is that both for your own time and the people you train as well?
I mean, I do work with people that want to just, speak to sell, for example. I still work with those people. But a lot of the people I work with are very much professional speakers. They want to be professional speakers. I tend to work people that are already slightly more on a trajectory versus just starting out. But I do work with experts. That's the thing. I
Okay.
don't. I don't tend to work with people that wake up and go, "Oh, well, I've got a great story to tell. I've got no experience." There are people that work with that. I just like to work with people that already have an expertise under the belt. You know,
Something you can refine as opposed
exactly
to
something I can
create.
refine because that's really where my genius lies. I can pull it out of people. It's just a different strategy. That's all. So back to your question. I feel a lot of the coaching elements. I think the ability to sometimes ask the right questions at the right time. Because at the end of the day, when you're dealing with speakers, public or not, or professional, you're putting a massive magnifying glass over someone, and everything's highlighted, the good and the bad. And so from coaching, I've learned a lot how to manage people's struggles, people's when they can't quite get something out or when they're blocked. I mean, I see a lot of self-worth issues. I see a lot of money issues, people not wanting to charge, not able to ask. I see a lot of people go through the fear of actually getting up. And these are really, and that's across the board. I've worked with celebrities and I work with Olympians and I've worked with, people on startups. Like everybody has their issues. And what coaching's allowed me to do is allow me to be present to it and be able to sometimes redirect or unlock. And it's definitely given me a massive um empathy strip. Like I've got a lot of empathy. I'm definitely not your good old push through it kind of person. Even yesterday working with people that the reason I'm down this way for lots of stuff was going on for them. And they were like, I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm like, well, I'm not going to push you where you don't want to go. Right. You can be uncomfortable, be pushed if you're happy to be pushed. And I think a lot of that's come from coaching as well.
So when you are working with your clients, um, and you're trying to take them to their position, I'm just trying to kind of think from the listener's perspective. If somebody's listening, thinking, actually, I do want to go and speak,
Hmm.
and that might be public, which I know is touching a little bit on your previous experience, but it might be professional as well.
Yeah.
What what would you say to them? It's almost like putting the chicken before the egg, because it's, for some people, I think it's really hard to get started on that. Because when you see somebody on stage, you immediately think, oh, that's that expert. And I think a lot of the fear that comes into that is, I'm not expert enough. I'll do
Hmm.
that when. What would you say to somebody? And is there a time where you would say to somebody, actually, you're not ready to be on stage, and you need to do something to, there's a couple of sides to that question, but um,
Well, I don't believe anyone has the right to tell someone that they shouldn't be on stage. That's where I come from. I think everybody who wants to be on stage, if you're willing to invest the time, the money to train, has the right to be on stage. I think where I might say someone's not ready if they've just starting out and they're going to get in front of 10,000 people, I might say you're
I think that's
not
more what I
quite
was
ready
saying.
for that.
It's yeah.
Yeah,
So where would you agree with the I'm not ready
yeah. I
versus
think
challenge it?
Yeah, I think I would challenge. Look, there's a couple of things we live by, right? First of all, I believe in start before you're ready, because if you wait for you're ready, you never start. So just start. I think that sometimes being like if someone, let's say they just finished working with me and they were fresh, yet someone turned to them and went, right, we want you. There's 1,000 people. Are you okay with that? It's a two-way thing, right? If the experience is going to be so traumatic that it's going to take them days to recover, even if they did a great job internally, then I'd say you're not ready,
Mhm.
right? But sometimes pushing someone straight into that they can blossom. So I think it's a considered conversation to have, and they will have to make the final decision. I think there are times that people have done it and they burn out very quickly on stage because managing a room of 1,000 is very different from managing a room of 50. Um, And that could potentially kill someone's career if they put on a big stage too soon. But I think it's also up to that person to rise to the occasion and show up. So for me, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and it's ultimately on them. You weigh up the good and the bad, and I do believe that with the right guidance, 90% of the time they'll do a really good job, right? If they've trained, if they're ready, in the sense that they've got the tools, they've got the talk, they've practiced it. Like if you're going to go up in front of 1,000 people, you would have done the talk at least 100 times. Now, whether that's over 3 days and you've just intensely rehearsed it, right, or whether you've actually delivered it. So I think I'm not ready is an interesting one because they can turn on and go watch me. And then that will make me smile,
Mm.
right? That will make me kind of go, okay, go for it. I just think you need to know the other side. If it doesn't work out, what are the consequences? Because something like a big gig means big expectations, also potentially big fee. And if you're not delivering, they can ask for money back, and some might even blacklist you. So as long as people are aware of the consequence, I'm all for like go for it.
And sorry, I had a question. It's gone. You're gonna have to edit this out. Sorry, David. This is what happens when you get a 48-year-old woman to interview.
A few moments later.
Obviously, we're talking about public speaking, professional speaking, using your voice for good, or
Yes.
whichever one of those might be, and that might be on a stage. When people think about speaking, they obviously generally think about a stage, but there are lots of different ways in which one uses one's voice. Um, would you say that's even more important in the last 2 or 3 years, especially, I guess, since COVID,
Yeah.
but especially since AI as well? Do you think that there's a surge and a rise in terms of people wanting to actually actively be speaking, whether it's on stages or other platforms?
I think, speakers become more diverse in the sense that, with the rise of social media and various platforms, if you're speaking to camera, technically you're speaking, right? Whether you're an influencer, whether you're a YouTuber, whether you're doing podcasts, right? Or whether you're on stage, the virtual, although virtual's fading again now. There's definitely a rise in live events. So I think it has become more important than ever to be able to speak. And I don't mean like in an everyday conversation. I mean in the sense that you're communicating your brand, your value, your service, your mission. Yeah, you use your voice for good was, Voice for Good was one
Mm.
of the podcasts I did, my own one. And I still stand behind using your voice for good, using your voice to impact communities, industries, so they're better for it, right? I don't think I'll ever work with someone that's, although it might be very lucrative, designs weapons, right? I understand their place in the world, but it just means I'm not going to get behind it.
Yeah.
So I think more than ever, you like a speaker's more diverse. A lot of people, I'm not a speaker. Well, do you speak to camera? Yes, I do. Well, you're a speaker, right? It's just the medium has shifted. And that was one of the things during the pandemic I was really fighting for. I was like, you know, speaking's still there. It's just how we deliver it has changed, right? If you do Zoom, you're speaking. If you do webinars, you're speaking. It's
Even
just
if you're in a boardroom,
right.
of people, the way that you communicate something is that impact that you have. It may not be on a stage, but what is the psychological thing about somebody is suddenly elevated even by a couple of steps, and they're on a stage, that their credibility just increases? What's that about?
I think it's the physical aspect of seeing someone up, right? There's something in the psychology around that. But there's also something about being invited in because of your expertise and then you're introduced that elevates people as well. So there's something from the dawn of years, right? That back to philosophers and people used to go listen to philosophers debate, they would watch and they were on that stage because they had something to say. And that goes way back, years and years, right? And that really hasn't changed, whether it's a virtual stage or the physical stage. There is something inside of us goes, wow, they're on stage. Now, then you still have to deliver the value, the expertise. And, we're very time poor now. We're very our attention's very poor now, because there's so many other things. There's so many brands competing for space in our brains and they own those spaces that the moment you're not interesting, they're not interested. And it's very easy for me to whip up my phone and check what's going on. So the fact that you're on stage is step one, but you still have to be a really great speaker that grabs attention, that hooks the audience, that takes them on a journey. That's still very important. But in the psychology, it's about elevating, looking up. Oh, wow, right?
That
They're
kind of
on stage.
pedestal, yeah.
Yeah, pedestal, not in a kind of putting yourself down, but wow, they're on stage. And there is something about that elevates people.
And going back to something you said earlier that I now remember my follow-up question on, you said that if you were speaking to a room of 1,000 people, that you should be rehearsing it 100 times. I'm sure that's
A rough
not
number.
necessarily to be taken literally,
Well,
but
ideally, yeah.
But what I'd love to know is how do you practice a speech and know it so well that you've done it 100 times, yet deliver it in a way that appears authentic and not scripted and rehearsed? Because I think, or I know that as humans, we can immediately detect a script and switch off because it's inauthentic and potentially even something we don't trust. So how do you go about perfecting it to the point of expert without losing the authenticity?
Well, I think number one, structure breeds confidence, right? So once you have a structure, it's your skeleton. So when I work with speakers, I'm not about scripts at all. I don't like scripts. I've never encouraged anyone to have a script,
Yeah.
right? You're not actors. Actors is different. Um, so I would say that when you practice what can go right just as much as what can go wrong. So you practice, imagine there's no slides, imagine you're heckled, right? So you start to integrate that into your rehearsals. And the way to do it is you would film yourself or record yourself and you listen back and then you do it again and then you watch it back and then you do it again. And so what you're really practicing is reaching the key parts of your talk, but not necessarily word for word how you reach it. So then it's always a bit fresh, it's always a bit new. And the other aspect to that is the 12 archetypes that I teach, which give that freshness, which give the newness, which means you're not always showing up as Elliot Kay delivering it. You're stepping into the rock star of Elliot Kay, you're stepping into the caregiver of Elliot Kay, you're stepping into mesmerizer, right?
So does that mean that you're turning up or down certain elements according to the audience? Is that
It's different tools to deliver. So it's stepping into different parts of yourself and giving yourself permission to play. And or when you need to be serious and be quite emotional, then you step into certain beingness, right? And that's how it's always fresh. So before starting a talk, you might go into what I would call fairy archetype, right? Everything's wow, everything's exciting. You're very curious. The other thing I do before doing a talk is I always channel, right? I'll channel and I give me the wisdom of Oprah and the power of Tony Robbins and the heart. I got that wrong actually. Give me the wisdom of Richard Branson, the heart of Oprah, and the power of Tony Robbins, right? And I'll sit there and I'll channel it. And that way it's fresh, it's new. And so even if you're doing the same keynote, you're able to up the energy and it starts becoming factory work, right? It becomes exciting. Plus, the audience is never the same. Things seldom land exactly the same every time, although jokes might because you worked on them. So it's really about the different tools of preparation that allow you to show up to look real, unscripted, and authentic. I do know people that do use scripts and they learn them brilliantly, and you wouldn't know they're scripted because what they've learned to do is if they go wrong, keep going.
mm,
And there's but people do crave imperfection now. Imperfection is a very big currency,
mm,
as is attention. So the fact that you do go wrong with things, it's not the people like that now. They really don't want polished.
mm.
In fact, it turns a lot of people off. A too polished a speaker.
Do you have a story of a time when you've something's gone wrong, whether it's tech or the talk or something on stage, and you've had to put it out of the bag?
I think one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is I did this talk. I was prepared for this talk and I hadn't asked the right questions. It was in London and I assumed that they didn't have businesses. And I walked into the room, I think it was 100 plus. I was introduced, massive round of applause. And I started my talk and I was like, okay, who here runs a business expecting only a few hands to go up? And all the hands went up.
Oh,
And in
there
that
goes my
moment,
talk.
basically, in that moment, it was like, oh, my whole content isn't right. And so then I just quickly reframed it and I was like, so listen, someone, this might be a bit basic for some of you, but you know what? Sometimes it's good to go over the basics.
Repetition is great.
Yeah, it's like repetition. So listen to me. If you know this, great. Go with me on this journey. But still, I could tell that
You lost some of the ring.
luckily they were being very British and polite. I think, yeah, that was one of the moments that bombed. And then inside, but I pulled it off, right? But I don't think I did myself because I think few people could read me and were like, oh, you really shat your pants. I don't know if I can say that or not.
Oh, we can say
You can
anything.
beep
We
it
can
if
say
you need
anything.
to. I pooed my pants in that moment. So people could read that. And then another time, actually, is I was doing a talk in London, big room, I think it was over 300. And I arrived thinking I had 30 minutes. And they were like, no, you've got an hour and a half.
I mean, that's not like 40 minutes, is it? It's
No.
like you have 3 times longer. Let's stretch out the cons. Is it worse that way round, or to have had your time shrunk?
Well, in a way, it's back to Power to Succeed days. So then what I did is I did my content, made some of it last. Then luckily there was a break. And then I just told 3 very in-depth stories. And luckily the AV knew my stuff. So he's able to actually integrate the music. And so we pulled out the bag in that respect. I don't have a technical thing in the sense. I mean, I've shown up to talks and the slides don't work.
Yeah, that's
And
yeah.
then I'm able to do it without the slides, or I just have them on the side and I use them as a prompt. I haven't had a massive technical issue, touch wood, yet. So, but those are some of the moments like, uh-oh.
So those both sound like they are more of the pre-communication, and just I guess if anyone's got a big talk coming up, it's really, really making sure with the organizer that there hasn't been a miscommunication around timing, around audience, and any of the things. But I think there's also a big thing that speaks to experience, which probably takes us back to the inexperienced person speaking to 1,000 people. If they had been put in either of those positions, they probably wouldn't have been able to have the tools to pull it out of the bag, as you say, because you had the stories
Yeah,
from your different talks, and with the first example, you probably knew, okay, I'm not going to deliver the best talk I've done in my life because it's not relevant to the audience. I'm going to do the best I can with it and
right.
take that attitude. Whereas I think without experience and the confidence to do that, I think probably a lot of people might have just, I don't know, pulled out or completely crumbled. So,
Yeah, I
so
mean, even in the professional world, you can show up to talks, and the talks are like one of the speakers overran, so they cut yours,
yeah,
or a speaker doesn't show up, so they extend yours. So I think you can be very experienced and it happens to you.
um,
I think it's the ability to think on your feet and be agile and flexible and be able to move with what's needed. That's what I think you're right in the sense that someone inexperienced wouldn't been able to think outside that box of what they rehearsed. Oh no, I need to come up with another 60 minutes of content. What do I do? Oh no, I was meant to do 60 minutes and now I've got 20. What do I do? Yeah, that's where experience kicks in.
yeah. So what would you say to somebody that wants to that understands the importance, especially in this day and age, of being out there, of speaking, whether it's professionally or public speaking, and maybe wants to get onto that journey? I'm assuming the two journeys are a bit different. Would you need to do public speaking first before professional, or not necessarily?
No, I don't think so. I think you can set out as a professional speaker from the word go if you want to get paid to speak. I think you have to be relevant. Like you have to be relevant. What you have to say has to matter. You have to solve a problem that people will pay for. You have to be really good as a speaker, right? And that where the time, money, investment comes in. I don't think you have to do the free ones first, although it will give you the time to really mold yourself as a speaker. You can still get testimonials, you can get footage, which helps sell you as a speaker. I think it's also understanding, it's a wild, wild west in terms of charging. What do you charge, right? And when you're starting out, you're not straight away, unless you've like hugely established and you've done something amazing, you're not going to get 10K the first gig you do, unless you're like the former CEO or you are a gold winning Olympian. Even then, like I've worked with Olympians and they're still not making 10K. They're not doing too bad. But to begin with, they started somewhere. So I think in that respect, you can start with the intention to be paid and you don't have to do the free gigs. The free gigs will help you build up your clientele, your testimonials. And you can always go, look, I'll do this. I am looking to get paid. I'll do this one, complimentary in exchange for a referral, a testimonial, right? And then there's a commercial value. We interviewed years ago. I had another podcast called the Public Speaking Expert Podcast, which I did years ago. We did almost 100 episodes. I didn't realize that when I look back and I was like, wow, we did a lot of episodes. It was with a guy called Jose. It wasn't just me. And we interviewed a guy on there, and he now charges $500,000 to speak, right? And so we interviewed him, and he said, the reason I can charge $500,000 to speak is because I did 250 free gigs and I built up the reputation. I built up my expertise, and now I can. I don't know how many times he gets paid that, but
Hey,
he gets paid quite a
work
bit.
one day a year, and I'm quite happy with that. Thank you very much.
Exactly, and you can get to that level. I mean, that's a real, even Branson and the likes of that, they're 250,000.
Mm.
So 500,000's a real big step up. I mean, when you start to get royalties or, the Trumps of them, people, that's 1 million, right? That you're not going to get them for less, you know. So like Meghan and Harry would charge 1 million.
So I'm interested in a couple of extra things from you. You right at the beginning talked about Watch Me, and I just
Yes.
wanted to dive into that a little bit more. So tell me about Watch Me because it's something that I think you've kind of always had that in you, but you seem to have kind of solidified it and be talking about that a bit more. So yeah, what's
Yeah,
that
so
about?
Watch Me is kind of, I didn't realize this. Actually, I did a talk. I went back to my dance school this year and I did a talk about, just what it was like to be a dancer. And I kept coming back to Watch Me attitude when being dyslexic, um, and I was going to write a book. Like, watch me. Like, people are like, how can you write a book? You're dyslexic. This is before, it was more accepted. It's like, watch me. When I wanted to be a professional speaker, watch me. When I was going to launch the Speaker Awards, I was told it won't quite work out. Watch me. And basically, it's an attitude. And I didn't realize this, but the book I'm writing is turning into a leadership book. I didn't intend it to be, but the more I dive into it, it's becoming more about leadership. So it's basically a non-permissive attitude. It's not aggressive, it's not angry, but you're not asking for permission. What you're saying is watch this journey unfold. And where you end up, I've had plenty of watch me's and they haven't worked out, right? But it's taking that bit between your teeth. Americans say, hold my beer, right? It's a bit like watch me go, right? And see where I land. And every time I've kind of done that, I've landed somewhere better than when I started. And so that's why I'm writing the book about. So there's key
Oh, so
moments in
that's
my
what the
life.
book is.
Yeah. It's all about
Okay.
the watch me attitude, which is turning into a leadership book. So that's what that's about. So next time he says, oh, I don't think quite work out, watch me, right? I don't think you're going to do this, watch me. I don't think you're going to go on Gladiators, watch me. It's not aggressive. I want to be clear. It's not angry. It's not like, watch me. It's like, I don't need your permission. I'm going to go on this path and what will be, will be.
And is it almost something you're telling yourself as well?
Yeah, you're definitely
So
saying it to
you're saying it
yourself.
to yourself.
There's the internal watch me and there's the external watch me. And either way, even if you're saying it to someone, you're saying it to yourself, right? And what I find it does is it opens up a pathway for you to explore because you're not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for validation. You're not waiting for someone to say, yeah, that's a really good idea. Go for it. Go and watch me. And you're just opening the possibility up. And that's what's great about the watch me attitude.
And speaking of that attitude, it's something that in recent years I think you probably used towards the Speaker Awards, which you've now got. How many? Is it 3, 4 years? It's been 3 years.
5 years next year.
Is
So
it 5?
yeah,
It's been.
5
Oh my
years. Yeah,
gosh.
2022 we launched it.
And what led you to want to have a space to reward speakers? Because within the UK, it's not something that's that recognised.
No, and the reason was coming off the back of pandemic, right? So it's 2022, and I was like, speakers gave up so much. I felt during the lockdowns of their resources, of their community, like we felt speakers did a lot for people, yet there was nowhere to reward them for it. So I thought it's time to shine the light on the great work speakers do. And that's where the Speaker Awards was born from. So I turned around to my business partner at the time and I said, I've got an idea. We should do an awards. And he slapped his head and said, oh,
Not another idea,
not
Elliot.
another
Put it
idea.
on ice.
Yeah. And I was like, no. He's like, right, you need to find a promotional partner. I was like, watch me. So I did. I found a promotional partner. And they went, well, we don't think you're going to make it happen in the timeline you've given yourself. So keep in mind, I was speaking to them in July and I'd booked the venue for November.
Watch me.
Yeah, watch me, right? But now looking back, that was very,
That's
very,
tight.
very tight. Like it takes us a year to get these awards ready now that it's a proper thing. Yeah, but it's basically shining a light on all the good work speakers are doing. And that's where the Speaker was born from. And then the Speaker Summit came from that. And then that's why it's grown into what it is. But there's quite a lot of watch me about it.
Yeah. And it's such an incredible space, not just to recognize the speakers, but as somebody in the room to actually see what's possible it is an incredible event. What's next? What's next for Elliot and the different strands of the businesses?
Yeah, so I think I'm simplifying my life, right? What's next is to build up Pro Speakers, which puts on the awards and the summit, to become an entity that pays us all full time. I just want to grow it to be what it could be, with the ambition to sell it in a few
Mhm.
years. So that's what's next. So actually, I'm streamlining the other stuff I'm doing outside of. I'm doing less trainings of my own, less courses of my own, less masterminds. And really focusing on the Pro Speakers as it's known, and then release the book, which will be released on the 3rd of July, 2026 at the Speaker Summit.
Ah,
Yes.
nice.
So I'm
That's
going to be,
nice.
actually, I got the okay from the team. It's really weird that now I have to pitch everything to my team. Like I used to just go, let's do this. And now I really have to pitch things to them. So we had a day working last week and had to pitch all these things to them, which isn't a bad thing.
I actually don't think it's a bad thing. And a previous guest I was speaking to, we were talking about the pros and cons of entrepreneurship. And what one of them is you can be as creative as you want and
Right.
do different things each day, but there's a big downside to that as well.
Yes.
And that brings us nicely on to the wrap-up question,
Okay, let's do
which
this.
is within brand mixology, that the whole notion is that there isn't one recipe for success that is the
What?
same for everyone. I know, right?
Crazy.
So public speaking as a notion cannot be it.
Or professional speaking
or
for that matter.
professional speaking. But what brand mixology is about is everybody having the right mixture of different things that is right for them in order to have their own recipe or cocktail for success. So I'm asking each of my guests to put into the cocktail mix their one thing, and there may be many, but one that you would pick out as something you think is a great lever for success, and then also one that you would put on ice. So that might be a bad piece of advice or something that you would advise against.
Which one are we starting with?
So let's start with the positive. What would you put into the cocktail mix as your success measure?
I'm going to go, is it just one word or can it be?
Ideally a word, but I will let you have a short sentence.
I'm going to go with simple.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Can you write it on a little piece of card? So simple.
I'm going to put my glasses up. Yeah, simple.
So you think it's all about just keeping things simple. And,
Yeah.
And does that mean sometimes having to rehash things to kind of just focus on one thing and simplify
I
it?
think so. Having got to where I am now, having run several businesses, some succeeded, some haven't, you're most effective with a clear mind and clear focus. And if you keep things simple, things actually happen a lot quicker without you having to do much more. So, like, as I said, I'm simplifying my life now. I'm getting rid of, and I'm upgrading, as you know, the word for 2025 was upgrade. And so all in all, I think simplification, keep things simple. They don't need to be complicated. I think as entrepreneurs as well, we tend to complicate because we want to be different and unique. And sometimes simple is better. So I'm going to put simple in
Love
there.
that.
Yeah.
And what would you put on ice? You can't just do the opposite of it.
Can I not? I'm going to put busy on ice. That
Explain in that one. I mean, obviously we
I
know what
think
busy
that
is.
there's a false trophyhood to being busy.
How
right?
are you busy?
Yeah, busy. I'm busy. Oh, I'm so busy. But also we end up being busy. Like I do know that feeling as an entrepreneur when you're sitting there and it's quiet and you're like, oh my God, I should be busy. And if focus is in the cocktail, then busyness should be, it shouldn't be rewarded. There's no medals for burnout. There's no medals for overstress. And I think there is this kind of like, I'm an entrepreneur. I should, the whole hustle culture is unsustainable. I get the attitude of hustling, going after things and things, but I think there's no point being busy for the sake of being busy, right? Busy periods, yes, but continuously being busy just leads to burnout, leads to depression, leads to stress, leads to disease. And I think people need to stop being busy and start being productive and focused, and actually less is more.
And actually fits beautifully in with simple, because I think if you are keeping things simple and concise, then you can put busyness on ice.
Oh, there we go. That was a good rhyme.
Poet, and I don't even know it.
There you go.
Elliot, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming here today. I know that you need to dash off now to do a whole event of
Aren't you
watching
buying
some
me lunch?
incredible speakers after I buy you lunch, of course. But it's been amazing to
Thank
talk,
you.
and I'd love to have you back to delve into a lot more of the personal development things that we didn't have time to go into.
Let's do it. Watch me.
Gee.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. If it resonated with you, feel free to share it with somebody who might appreciate it too. And of course, as always, liking and subscribing really helps the podcast to grow. It means we can reach even more people. Really look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And until then, let's keep mixing it up and keep building a brand and life we actually want.